Hey guys, Jake here of Downtown Rams. Before we get into the show, I want my listeners to check out Thrive Fantasy. Thrive Fantasy has simplified daily fantasy by only asking you about top-tier talent. They have over $50,000 in guaranteed prizes for Week 1 of the NFL season. All you have to do is head on over to your app store, whether it be Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, and grab the Thrive Fantasy app today. Sign up and enter our code DTSN and receive an instant 100% match on your deposit up to $250 now until Sunday. This offer is only for a limited time, so make sure you get it while it lasts and prop up.
Aaron Donald creates the fumble. Goff goes crashing into the end zone.
It is intercepted by Jalen Ramsey.
Robert Wood, touchdown, LA!
Picked off by John Johnson.
Caught, touchdown, Tyler Higbee. It's Michael Brockers who gets there.
A'Shawn Robinson.
Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air.
Taylor Rapp, who had one taken away, will take this into the end zone.
Henderson with a good run and a first down, still on his feet.
Safety in the arms of Leonard Floyd.
Up top, touchdown, Van Jefferson.
Terrell Lewis.
Everett in stride. Wow!
Hit behind the line, Terrell Burgess, 26.
At the goal line and in for his second touchdown. Malcolm Brown into the end zone.
Abu Khan with the strip sack.
Picked off by Troy Hill.
Akers with a stiff arm. Akers into the end zone. Cam Akers.
LA will play for the Lombardi.
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast. It's episode 312 of the podcast. Your host, Jake Ellenbogen here. Joining me, as always, is Alexis Kraft, and we have a special guest who's going to act as our Eagles analyst, our guru, the guy that we're going to go to about the Eagles since the Rams do play the Eagles this week. That is Benjamin Solak. You can find him at Bleeding Green Nation, BGN Radio, as well as the Draft Network. He really does a great job, so we're really happy to have him on. How's it going, Ben? Always a pleasure to get to talk with you.
Appreciate it, Jake. Yeah, man, everything's delicious. I'm glad to be on. I'd like to be 1-0, but sometimes you just blow up in the second half, and you're 0-1 against Washington. So that's where we are now.
Yeah, can relate to that, and again, just to double off Jake there, thank you so much for being here. We're excited to talk to you, and I just kind of want to start things off going into this Rams-Eagles game with the injury report. The Rams currently don't have anybody on the injury report, but the Eagles, as of today, as far as who's not practicing, defensive end Brandon Graham, who is on concussion protocol, and then wide receiver Alshon Jeffrey has a foot injury. At limited participation, we have defensive tackle Javon Hargrave, who has a pectoral and hamstring issue going on, as well as offensive tackle Jason Peters, who has a knee problem. But one of the bright lights for the Eagles, and I'll let you kind of talk about this, is at full participation, we have defensive end Derek Barnett, offensive tackle Lane Johnson, and running back Miles Sanders. So just going into this week, Ben, what does this Eagles injury report mean for the Eagles?
Yeah, maybe we have a starter or two back, and that would be nice because the Eagles are out here we had 5 starters out on offense in week 1, which is, in terms of where you want to be to open the season, that's about 5 starters short. It's been just a story, a litany of poor health for the Eagles pretty much since the end of the Super Bowl run. They've cycled through 2 firings and new medical staffs and training staffs, both in the 2019 offseason, and then the 2020 offseason. So we're on our third staff since the Super Bowl year, and still they cannot seem to shake nagging injuries. So Lane Johnson being back is an extremely big deal. You had a 2019 UDFA and Nate Herbig at right guard and a 4th-round rookie 2020 at Jack Driscoll at right tackle. And you saw significant pass protection breakdowns in communication and in quality of play against Washington. It's hard to give up 8 sacks in a game. You got to be special bad to do it, and the Eagles did it. Not to mention, no Miles Sanders in the backfield means that Boston Scott and Corey Clement were primary pass protectors as backs, and they both had their opportunities to blow protections and to make pass protection mistakes, which led to sacks. So Carson took 8 sacks against Washington, and a lot of that does fall on him. Carson likes to hold the ball. He likes to stand in the pocket, invite pressure. That's a lot easier with Lane Johnson and Miles Sanders, and you're not going to take as many sacks. Of course, Nate Herbig against Aaron Donald is still a source of great terror for us Eagles fans, but Lane and Miles being back is the biggest deal. That's what's going to really affect things for the Eagles. They're deep at defensive tackle. They can survive no Javon Hargrave for another week. Same thing goes with Derek Barnett, though Vinny Curry now on IR does hurt their edge depth. The big win is the right tackle in the back. That's going to help their pass protection, wake up the running game a little bit. That's where they struggled.
Yeah, I hear you there. I watched that game. I felt like, the Eagles, should win. And, that, the Redskins, while they have a sneaky defense, they couldn't get anything going really on offense until, Peyton Barber somehow quietly had 2 touchdowns. So, yeah, I totally hear you there. And I think really the thing coming into this game, Ben, and the thing that, a lot of Rams fans were saying is if this team doesn't have Miles Sanders, if this team doesn't have Lane Johnson, if they're not participating, if Javon Hargrave can't play, then you're looking at a potential, maybe this is a blowout. But I think if you add Javon Hargrave back in the mix, I don't think Alshon Jeffrey is going to miss this game. I don't think Brandon Graham will miss this game. I really think everyone on the injury report is probably going to play. And I think this is a big game for the Eagles too. I mean, anytime you're intra-conference like this, especially 2 teams that, let's be real here, the Eagles have gotten the best of the Rams, for the last few years and beyond. The Rams haven't beat the Eagles since 2004. But, I think this is a very important game. This is one of those games you could look at, towards the end of the year. This is a tiebreaker, for, say, a wild card spot or what have you. So, I definitely think all those guys will play. Now, I just want to get your thoughts now on both teams heading into week 2 and kind of beyond. Like, how do you see the Rams, looking from a different perspective? How do you see them as a team coming in? Whereas a lot of people felt like, they had no chance against Dallas, and then, kind of for the rest of the year.
Yeah, no, I'd be lying to you if I said I made money on that Rams-Dallas game. I was pretty big on the Cowboys covering, and that was dumb. I mean, when this line opened, Rams-Philly, Eagles were 2.5-point favorites. It's 1.5 favored for the Rams last I checked, and a 4-point swing is about as big as it gets in Vegas. And so telling you that rapid shifting in the perceptions of both teams. A lot of the Eagles movement has to do with the injuries on the offensive and defensive line. Alshon's not going to be back for this game. They were considering IRing him. He didn't participate. He's not going to be back. So their wide receiver room is really young, but it's the lines that are really concerning. What you saw with the Rams against the Cowboys was, and Chris Collinsworth kind of alluded to this halfway on the broadcast, talking about how much more physical that offensive line looked. I mean, after the losses the Rams had 2018 into 2019 on the offensive line, they had to get some young guys out there. There was a growth period. Everybody knows that the Rams offensive line play was just about dreadful to start that season. Got better as the year went on. And what you saw in 2020, that first year with this first game of this year, was that the Rams were able to run the ball with different concepts than what McVay initially brought. In that 2017 Coach of the Year, and then 2018, the Super Bowl run, we were running zone. We were a zone team in Los Angeles, and we were going to base our play action game off of that. That identity remains, but with the C.J. Anderson, Todd Gurley dichotomy that happened there, with dealing with Gurley's injury last year, the Rams experimented more with duo, more with a quasi-inside zone that's really a power blocking play. And then in 2020, unbutton that top button, started running some power, started running some counter, started pulling some guys, right? Can't remember watching McVay pull guards before. We were out here just pulling guards on Dallas, and that's a big deal because it makes it a lot more difficult to read blocks when you're in the defensive line. You have to play a little bit slower. And it also means McVay gets to build out new series, build out new play action passes that work off of offensive line action that's different. Build off new constraint plays and jet sweeps and all of those other little nonsense screens that, again, they look different now because you have a whole different style of run blocking that a team has to prepare for. So now instead of saying, all right, they're going to run zone at us, so here's how we're going to fit it, there's a lot more you have to process in the box. And that I think is really what got Dallas. Dallas wanted to tee off, man. They wanted to send Everson Griffin and Alden Smith, and they wanted to rush and go. And Jared Goff hard counted them, and then they trapped them and they ran pullers at first and second level. Those linebackers were left on islands. And that's why that running game, Malcolm Brown was really able to open up, and that gives you your screens and your play action passing game. And that's how that McVay offense works. So the biggest thing that I see with the Rams in terms of the change, right, from that 3-point dog against Dallas to all of a sudden a 4-point swing, 1.5-point favorite over the Eagles, is that when McVay's really now built out this running game to be multiple, to be physical, to bring guys off the ball, that play action game becomes just deadly. There's nothing you can do with it. Jared Goff doesn't have to think. He's just point and shoot, and that's where he's at his best. So that Rams offense is developing. It's growing. This is McVay 2.0, and if it continues throughout September, we got to have a serious conversation about where McVay is among offensive coordinators. That's a big deal.
Yeah, and speaking of Jared Goff, I mean, going into this game, you've got the first and second overall picks from the 2016 draft in Jared Goff and Carson Wentz. Who do you think has the better game? Because it feels like, whenever there's a situation where quarterbacks are taken back to back, they always get compared to each other. There's always this kind of quote unquote rivalry between the two, whether they acknowledge it or not. So who do you think has a better game, or who's really in the better situation going into this game? Is it Wentz or Goff?
I don't want to answer this. Oh, why are you asking me this? It's Goff. And the reality is, do either of you guys know anything about Nate Herbig? Because I don't, and I cover the team. And that's where we are in terms of the Eagles' offensive line injuries. And that's what you're concerned about, right? You have season-ending injury to Brandon Brooks at right guard, season-ending injury to Andre Dillard at left tackle, Lane Johnson not being at 100%. Worth noting that Lane dealt with high ankle issues last year that he played through, and he's still out here dealing with ankle issues. I mean, it's a concern long-term. I don't think Lane's coming back at 100%. Jason Peters, obviously at left tackle, has not been 100% probably since 2018. He's really getting long in the tooth. This offensive line is not good for Carson. Now, for a lot of quarterbacks in the league, you could work around that. The Eagles media has been desperately asking Doug Peterson, why aren't you rolling Carson out? Why aren't you moving his spot? And he just doesn't really have a great answer, because they need Carson outside of the pocket. He does not work the pocket well. Carson's an escape artist. He survives contact, but he also invites a lot of contact, causes his own problems. He gets mud feet in the pocket. He wants to stand in there Big Ben style and just throw guys off of himself with one arm and chuck it 40 yards. He's a little nuts like that. And so if you had a quarterback who was a little more risk averse, then you could survive offensive line injuries like this. With Carson, he just continues to try to stand in there, and that's why you get 8 sacks against Washington. So in the offensive line right now, it's tough to expect Carson having a quality game. We saw for 20 minutes what it could look like, and then Washington really dialed in on that pass rush, and all of a sudden the Eagles went scoreless for the final 40 minutes of that game. Meanwhile, offensive line's getting better in Los Angeles. The offensive design gets Goff outside of the pocket a lot, which he's not as mobile as Carson, but McVay understands why that's beneficial, why to get a guy outside of the pocket on bootlegs helps slow down the pass rush. That's a big deal. I think that there's an acknowledgement in the league now in Goff's 5th year that, McVay does have to baby him a little bit. Goff's not great under pressure. Goff's not a great post-snap processor, but the situation really, really helps Goff there. And I think that that's going to be true for this game and probably true for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I definitely hear you there. I mean, when you watch Carson Wentz, I mean, this is somebody that, when he's on, he's on. And when he has protection, I mean, he's one of the better quarterbacks in football. I mean, he has all the tools. There's a reason why, I was actually, a pro Wentz guy during the draft. I wanted Wentz over Goff. And yes, Rams fans have given me a lot of hard times because of that. But, I think it kind of goes to show you, though, one, kind of is more like he's helped out more by the scheme. I think the others really, in a sense, Carson's not a point and shoot guy. Like, he's somebody, like you said, he will sit in there like Big Ben and make plays that you're like, wow, there's like only a handful of guys in the league that would even attempt to try what he did. And it's not a great way to play. You could go back and, the RG3 epidemic, with his knee and everything, that's just with him taking off. But It's like Wentz will hold it in the pocket and just get drilled. And I think that's the thing, is that, as well as the Rams defensive line, I thought, played against Dak Prescott and like pressured him, Dak still got the ball out pretty quickly to the point it didn't like destroy them. Like, yes, Donald blew up a lot of plays, but he didn't get sacked 8 times. He got sacked 3 times. So, I thought he did a good job of quick trigger. We'll see if Wentz somehow, changes to that. I mean, Wentz has had success against the Rams. I mean, we're not going to act like he hasn't. But what I want to ask you, Ben, going in this next question, X factors are huge. And I think the first thing that comes to mind, I hear X factor in this game, I'm looking right over to your tight end, Dallas Goedert. I think this team really, really values him long term. This is a guy that had 54 snaps, 79% of the offense last week. Mm-hmm. But who is your X factor for the Eagles and then for the Rams?
X factor for Philadelphia is Avonte Maddox. And Maddox played a real good game against the Rams in 2018. Yeah, his rookie year, 2018. Yeah. And that was a year where Maddox was moving around a lot on the back end because of the injuries the Eagles had sustained. He was a 4th-round rookie. We thought he was going to be the slot corner. They had to play him at outside corner. They had to play him at free safety. And that was a game where, because of injuries, it was one of his first games starting at outside corner, and he was breaking up passes on Josh Reynolds in the end zone to ice the game away. You know what I mean? He showed in that game that he had the potential to play outside corner. And here we are 2 years later. The Eagles added Darius Slay, but did not make any other significant moves at outside corner this offseason because they believed in Maddox's ability, despite being a shorter guy and not as long of arms, to stick around at outside corner. When you're dealing with the Rams, if you try to sit in zone, you're in trouble. Because the way that they flood sides of the field off boot action, off play action, get 3 receivers break into a sideline, means you're going to get overwhelmed. And Eagles do not have the linebackers to hang. Eagles linebacking core is rough. And so if you're sitting in zone and trying to sink under play action crossers, Goff's going to dice you up and down the field. So the Eagles are going to need to play man coverage. And with Darius Slay over Robert Woods, they should be successful in that matchup. Woods is a good ball player. Darius Slay is a great one. And that's going to be a fun one to watch. Woods is going to win his own, but Slay's coming off a performance where he shadowed Terry McLaurin and gave up 1 catch. So we're feeling good about Slay and man. Avonte Maddox is your man too. And so he's looking at Cooper Kupp. He's looking at Josh Reynolds. He's looking at Van Jefferson. And we know what Van Jefferson can do to guys in man coverage. We know what Cooper Kupp can do to guys in man coverage. So his role in man cover over the number 2 receiving option for the Rams is a really, really important deal for that Eagles offense, that Eagles defense, which wants to sit in man coverage. For the Rams, to me, it's got to be Micah Kiser, Troy Reeder, whatever you guys are doing at off-ball linebacker, because no more Corey Littleton. And yeah, that you brought up Dallas Goedert. You want to be able to follow Dallas Goedert with a linebacker, you need a Corey Littleton type. Corey Littleton ain't here anymore. And so figuring out what you're going to do matchup-wise with that tight end, because the Eagles are going to have 2 tight ends in Ertz and Goddard. And even with Miles Sanders back, that's a really good receiving option out of the backfield. And man, Taylor Rapp can't cover all of them. And John Johnson can't cover all of them. So the Eagles love to throw to their tight ends, and they love to throw to their backs. They love to throw against linebackers. That's the matchup they want to hunt. And the Rams lost a really good cover linebacker in Corey Littleton in free agency. Have not necessarily replaced him with anybody, in my opinion. Blake Jarwin was, already had an explosive reception against the Rams before he had that injury that took him out of that game. And that was a big loss to that passing offense. So you want to stop the Eagles passing offense. Yeah, Ramsey's going to be a big deal. Troy Hill, I think, is a good player, but safeties and linebackers covering tight ends and backs is where you're going to have to make your money. And that's where I think the Rams should be a little concerned.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And, I'm really curious to see how well the Rams defense plays against this Eagles offense. And I'm really glad that you brought up Miles Sanders, because that was going to kind of be my next question is, now that we pretty much know that he is going to be playing against the Rams, how do you see the Eagles using him? Do you think they're going to be using him mostly as a back or a receiver? And how many carries do you just think he gets? Because obviously coming off of an injury, you never really know how much a team is going to utilize a player. So do you think he's going to be a major weapon against the Rams, or do you think that the Rams are going to do a pretty good job of keeping him quiet?
Yeah, it's a tough question, right? Because Doug Peterson and Deuce Staley, over the 4 years they've been coaching together, have never had a lead back. They kind of did with LeGarrette Blount for the first half of 2017, but even then it was because they didn't really have anybody else. Miles Sanders, the debate for the fantasy community all offseason was, is Sanders going to be a lead back? In the Eagles' first game against Washington without Sanders, they were the most pass-heavy team on a neutral script. They first and second down, win probability between like 20 and 80%. So not garbage time, not 2-minute drill, not losing by 10. Eagles passed 70% of the time. With no offensive lineman and with no Miles Sanders, they had no interest in running the football. If Sanders is healthy, I think you're going to see a strong move that way. The Eagles were last year one of the heaviest first and second 10 run teams in the league. That was the one area of analytics where Doug Peterson really seems to be comfortable just, sticking with the football guy mentality and running on those early downs. So with Sanders back, I think you're looking at a high volume game, assuming that hamstring is at 100%. As we know, hamstring injuries can be extremely nagging. We could get 3-4 Sanders runs on the first drive, and then all of a sudden he pulls up a little lame, and they don't want to overwork him in one game. But if he's healthy, it's a 20 carry game. And what they're going to look to do against the Rams is similar to what they did in that last matchup they played in 2018. Did they play in 2019 or no? 2018? I can't remember.
I know it's like the years kind of just collide into
Right.
each other. I don't know if they played last year. I think it was 2018.
Yeah, in 2018 they got a good game out. It was the it was because it was the Carson Wentz game because Nick Foles was in 2017. Yeah, what they were able to get against the Rams was a lot of 3 safety looks because of the 2 tight end surfaces, because of Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz both being on the field. And when the Eagles get a safety in the box, they run on it. That's the beauty of the Eagles' 12 personnel. Listen, if you want to put safeties over Dallas Goedert, put safeties over Zach Ertz to cover them in the passing game, well, now you've got safeties with primary run responsibility, and Dallas Goedert packs a mean punch. So you want to come meet him in the hole, you're going to lose. And so the Eagles, if they go out basing 12 personnel, which is what they typically do, they're going to run on the Rams' 3 safety looks, which is how the Rams usually respond to that sort of a surface. And so big power runs, same side single back power, inside zone, a lot of the stuff the Eagles usually use between the tackles with Miles Sanders. We also saw in week 1 when they did run the football, Rich Scangarello, the old offensive coordinator in Denver, who's a member of the Kyle Shanahan tree, he's now in Philadelphia, and they did incorporate some of that under center, wide zone, Kyle Shanahan, Shane McVay nonsense as well. And that's going to get your linebackers and your safeties moving again against offensive linemen climbing to the second level. So high volume game for Miles Sanders. If he's healthy with that hamstring, it's always a little bit tricky there.
Yeah, and kind of looking, moving forward with that, I want to ask you, is there a certain matchup that kind of stands out to you for the Rams or the Eagles, as far as like on offense to exploit? I know we kind of went over a little bit, but is there somebody that could like really break open this game based on their matchup?
Sorry, on which unit?
On either the Rams or the Eagles offense.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I wasn't sure. Right, Rams offense. I was the biggest Van Jefferson fan you ever met. I'm really actually upset because I was first. I don't care what anybody else says. I was like, yo, this guy's good, and then everybody else was like, yo, maybe he's good. And I was like, no. I said it first. Van's game against LSU, from a draft perspective, was bonkers. I mean, that's about as good as it gets. And obviously, he's an older prospect, and he's a polished prospect, and there's a ceiling there. But the Rams took that guy in Cooper Kupp 3 years ago, and were, pleased as plum to get him. And now it's Van Jefferson all over again, right? With that model of a rookie receiver coming in and immediately being successful, just executing their concepts and getting the job done. So Van scares me. The Eagles' corner room is extremely thin. And for everything that Darius Slay and, as I brought up, Avonte Maddox are, if you're an 11 personnel, which we know the Rams are, then you're looking at, nickel Roby Coleman, a good nickel, working against that third receiver. And I think with Maddox and Roby Coleman against guys like Kupp and Van, there's a potential for just nickel and diamond the ever-living daylights out of this defense. And so that's the guy that I look at for the Rams offense, is that third receiver, namely Van Jefferson. For the Eagles, Jalen Reagor. Rager's the rookie receiver out of TCU, first-round pick. 1 reception for 55 yards in the Eagles' opening game against Washington, but that boy was 2 inches away from a 70-yard touchdown to close out the first half. And he had a little bit of miscommunication with Carson Wentz in week 1. That should have been touchdown. He slowed up when Carson Wentz expected him to keep going, and they, like I said, missed it by an inch. There was an interception Wentz threw to Reagor where the timing on the route was off, the spacing on the route was off, and then Rager was unable to fight back to the football. I don't think in 1 week you solve all those problems, but one connection from Carson to Rager, I think, can be improved into 2, 3, 4 connections. He's got game-breaking speed. He's great with the ball in his hands. The Eagles went big play hunt in week 1 against the Washington football team. No quarterback had a higher depth of target than Carson. They're going to continue deep ball hunting, even if the pass rush is getting there, and Rager is one of their primary deep threats. So that they need to get the rookie cooking.
So I'm going to flip that question to you about the defense. So what player on the Rams and what player in the Eagles do you think is going to be a big impact?
I'm contractually obligated to say Sebastian Joseph Day because he's from Stroudsburg High School, class of 2000 and, 11, 12? I don't remember. When I was a freshman, he was a senior, and he said hi to me once, and that was the coolest thing that ever happened. So I've been a big Bash fan. Bash, what we called him in high school. I don't know if they still call him that. But I was a big Bash fan when he went to Rutgers, and when he goes picked in 2018, I was so excited. I'm always pumped for him. But in truth, the interior rush is what's the big deal here. Obviously, Donald against Nate Herbig is the biggest disparity of any individual one-on-one matchup you're going to get in the NFL in week 2, period. That's probably the worst starting guard in the league against the best defensive tackle in the league. So that's got me scared. But even then, with Isaac Seumalo at left guard and Jason Kelsey at center, Kelsey's not the biggest dude. Seumalo's not the best pass protector. Donald's going to be able to generate a lot of problems across the interior, regardless of against whom he lines up. So I know it's not a fun answer because obviously it's Aaron Donald, but that interior pass rush is going to be where the Eagles are the weakest. Defensively for the Eagles, Derek Barnett comes back from injury, which is intriguing and interesting, and hopefully he's healthy. But what they got in his absence from Josh Sweat, 2018 4th-round pick out of Florida State, he was one of the most successful pass rushers in week 1 per the pass rush win rate that's published by ESPN. He had multiple pressures, only 1 sack because of how quickly Dwayne Haskins got rid of the football, faster than any quarterback in week 1. Jared Goff holds the ball a little longer, takes a lot deeper drops, and especially on that play action. So a bit of a cheating answer, but Derek Barnett coming back and also Josh Sweat being a big part of that rotation with Vinny Curry injured, Eagles need to get pressure on Jared Goff. That's where he's at his weakest. That's where he makes his mistakes. His interceptions all come from pressure. So the defensive ends are important for Philadelphia. Josh Sweat and Derek Barnett, 2 young guys who they really need to step up.
Yeah, it's funny hearing you say Josh Sweat. I've been waiting for him to get his opportunity. I was like the biggest Josh Sweat fan in the 2018 class.
That first year, they had to teach him how to get off the ball. You know what I mean? At Florida State, he was 2-gapping. And so they had to teach him, we need you to run. So it's been a process. It's been a couple years now. He started to flash in year 2. But, man, it wasn't a great tackle. And Jaron Christian, who he was playing in Washington, but he was throwing moves. And it's good to see. He's got all the athleticism in the world, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm hoping, I mean, they're not the same, but I'm hoping the Rams do something along those lines, kind of developing Ja'Kai Polite, because I think he has a lot of ability and, I think the potential's there. You saw 1 snap last week and, he had a pressure on Dak despite having his face mask and his jersey being tugged. So, that was his only snap of the game. That was pretty good production. But with that being said, do you see any of these teams generating any turnovers? Because, for instance, the Rams and Cowboys game felt like we would see more, turnovers. But really, it was just the Jared Goff interception that I won't even get to the whole, face, hands to the face thing. But there was a Jared Goff interception, and that was really it for turnovers. How do you see this one going in that regard?
Carson Wentz is like the biggest fumble rate in history in terms of a starting quarterback. So that's going to happen. Yeah, when Wentz gets pressured, his thought is, well, let me just try to throw the ball as far as I can. And that usually ends in a fumble. You go back to 2016 NFL draft, John Gruden QB camp for ESPN. And John Gruden's trying to teach Wentz how to be a 2-handed monster, right? That phrase that he liked with the ball in the pocket. He's got Wentz dropping back. He's got guys hitting him with pool noodles, right? Trying to teach him how to hold that ball with 2 hands when he's moving in the pocket. And here we are 5 years later, and Wentz still isn't doing it. And so Wentz is going to put the ball in the dirt when it comes to managing the pocket and then getting pressures and getting sacks. He does it pretty much once every 3 quarters, once every 50 minutes. I think the rate is like it's more than once per game. So he's going to put the ball on the ground. And then conversely, right, Jared Goff's got one of the worst interception rates when he's under pressure. Goff does not make positive decisions when it's late in the down, late in the snap, the clock's running on him, and he feels the pressure to create for himself. Like I said, Goff wants to point and shoot. He wants to know where he's going with the ball pre-snap, post-snap. He can paralyze or he can get blind. And that's not an uncommon trait. It's not a prohibitive trait to being a good quarterback in the league, but it is something that Goff deals with. And so I think, the Eagles are a defense that are predicated on pass rush. They are going to get Goff under pressure, and Goff will throw an interception. Rams got this kid named Aaron Donald. He's kind of good, and Carson Wentz fumbles it when he's getting sacked. And so he's going to put the ball on the ground. So, I think a turnover-heavy game, not heavy game, but I think you're going to see short fields for offenses. That's kind of the nature of both these quarterbacks.
Yeah, and other than, a heavy turnover game, I do want to ask you if you have any, stat predictions for this game. I know for myself, I think that Aaron Donald is going to get at least 2 sacks. That's just one of my predictions that I have. I think Aaron Donald's going to have a big game because, as we've talked about, this Eagles offensive line is pretty shaky and you don't really know what to expect. So do you have any stat predictions for either the offense or the defense and for the Rams or the Eagles for this game?
Yeah, no, I was looking at Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. I didn't realize somebody tweeted it. I don't remember who it was. I think it's a fantasy guy. But when they've both been on the field, Robert Woods has been out targeting Cooper Kupp by like a lot recently, which surprised me. I didn't realize that was the case going back into last season and stepping into this season. So as somebody who spends a lot of time looking at betting lines, both Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods are at 6 catches, I think, is their prop line. I would guess that Robert Woods gets more volume than that. Like I said, he does have to deal with Darius Slay, and that can get tricky, but I think he's going to get a lot more passing volume than Haskins was able to get to McLaurin in week 1. So I think that you're in for a high-volume Robert Woods game and a high-volume Cooper Kupp game, to be frank. That's where you're going to be successful, is with those wide receivers on the quick game, getting the ball out before the Eagles' pass rush arrives. Like I said, Darius Slay is good, but their corner 2 and corner 3 are what you're worried about, and Slay won't mirror Woods 100% of the time. So that's the one I'm looking for there. The other big stat thing to look out for the Eagles' perspective is, tight end Zach Ertz wants a new deal. Travis Kelce and George Kittle obviously got their new deals. And Ertz got woefully outproduced by Dallas Goedert. I mean, Jake, when you brought it in and saying the Eagles mismatch weapon at tight end, Dallas Goedert, that's the first time that's been uttered in a long time, because usually it's been Eagles mismatch tight end weapon Zach Ertz. But Goedert really had that strong week 1, and he has been blossoming as a receiver going back to last season. Zach Ertz with the Eagles they're in a really tricky spot contract-wise, and there's a trade deadline coming up in November. And it's unlikely that Ertz wants to play under the final year of his deal. It's unlikely that the Eagles have the money to extend him the way that he wants to. And so Ertz's production and his target share is extremely important in Philadelphia right now, because if Goedert continues to outproduce him as a receiver, Goedert is a measurably better blocker. And if Goedert is clearly the future at tight end for Philadelphia, then the Eagles are going to start looking at options for Zach Ertz approaching that trade deadline in about 8 weeks. And so Zach Ertz, the volume that he gets, especially after dropping a key fourth down conversion opportunity last week, the volume he gets is a very, very big deal in the passing game. And with bad linebackers in LA, he should get a lot of targets. And so the big thing I'm watching for is how much Ertz gets the ball thrown his way, especially relative to Goedert.
Yeah, and you mentioned linebackers repeatedly for the Rams, but I'm interested because I don't think we really touched on the Eagles linebackers. How do you see?
We don't have
because
to.
I look at
no, we don't need to. It's okay. Don't worry about them.
But for real though, because looking at like last week, Tyler Higbee, you could tell he's just different than what he used to be. You can tell that at the end of last year when he came on strong, and people were thinking, well, it's just just the teams the Rams are playing, or it's just the fact that Jared Goff's only looking his way. Like, no, Tyler Higbee definitely looks different. He looks more confident. He looks like just a better receiving tight end, all around tight end. With that being said, so last week Duke Riley plays 57 snaps. T.J. Edwards plays 20. Nate Gary, I think he only missed 1 snap. He played 99% of them.
Yep.
I know they opt for, kind of like that speed in their nickel package. And obviously, looking at somebody like Duke Riley, I think he's, a very athletic linebacker. Who do you see covering, Tyler Higbee? And is Tyler Higbee, a candidate to really break out in this game?
Well, I mean, Logan Thomas did the Eagles bad in week 1. So if Tyler Higbee can't break out, brother, we got to have a conversation about Tyler Higbee. The Eagles cover tight ends with TJ Edwards or Nate Gary, and neither goes well. TJ Edwards, undrafted free agent out of Wisconsin, is a good 2-down backer. He's a smart cookie, good between the tackles. He cannot cover. And the Eagles know this, but don't care. They were comfortable dropping him into short zones. He had multiple completions on him. Nate Gary made a critical coverage mistake. It was a 3rd and 8, and he tried to intercept the ball and gave up a completion, tried to break up a pass and just making a tackle. He does not have good coverage instincts. He is not a fast processing player. Nate Gary takes the cheese on play action, unlike most starting linebackers in the NFL, which makes you wonder why he's a starting linebacker in the NFL. And if there's a team you do not want your second-level defenders biting on play action against, it is the Los Angeles Rams. I'm terrified of the Eagles' linebacking core, have been since the offseason. And this is particularly a game where they are going to be a liability. Like I said, the Eagles are going to try to stick in man coverage. They tried to do it against Washington the whole way down, which is new for this defense, and they're 100% going to stay with that against the Rams. That's hopefully going to get your linebackers into cleaner reads. If your linebackers' man cover responsibility is the running back, then he can flow to play action a lot more aggressively and safely because that's where the running back is going. But if they want Nate Gary dropping curl flat and also playing the run, it's going to be a long day for the Eagles. So this linebacking room is a liability. Tyler Higbee gets TJ Edwards, Nate Gary, and man cover. That's an opportunity for a lot of targets, a lot of production.
Yeah, and, because the way you started talking about the linebackers, I was like, wait a minute. So obviously we know you don't like the Rams linebackers, and I can't say I blame you. But now I need to know, who do you think has the better linebacker group? Because, it seems to me like they're pretty similar in that sense. I think you have more experience, obviously, with the Eagles, but you look at the Rams, you have Micah Kaiser, you have Troy Reeder, you have Kenny Young and Justin Hollins, who's really more of an outside linebacker. And then that's really it. I know they're using Taylor Rapp as kind of their pseudo linebacker, but that's really it for them. And then you look at TJ Edwards, Nathan Gary, Duke Riley, Davion Taylor, Sean Bradley, and Alex Singleton for the Eagles. So who would you say actually has the better linebacker room?
Yeah, it's funny because Micah Kaiser and not Nate Gary. Micah Kaiser and TJ Edwards are two branches of the same tree in terms of you really like them if you're positive the opponent's running the football. And then when you're not, you don't, it's not as fun as it once was. And so Micah Kaiser is, I think, about what TJ Edwards is going to be. I like Kenny Young. I've always liked Kenny Young. I liked Kenny Young coming out of UCLA. I thought that he was underdrafted. I thought that he was a good get in the Marcus Peters deal for what the Marcus Peters deal was. And I think that's your best cover linebacker that's playing in this game. I'd be lying to you if I said I've focused well on Kaiser, Young, and Reeder for the Rams to the same degree to which I have the Eagles. I think I like the Rams core better. But let's be honest, neither one of us want the linebackers we currently have. You know what I mean? So that it's a problem for both of our defenses.
Yeah, I mean, the Rams linebacking core, Jake and I have talked about it, to no end on the podcast. It's just, it's not our favorite, but obviously hoping that there's a way that they can improve somehow or defy all expectations and whatnot. But, yeah, I mean, we could talk to you about this game, honestly, probably for hours, but just to wrap it up here, what is your final score prediction for the Rams versus Eagles?
Yeah, I think the Eagles win, but also it's too early for me in the season to start predicting the Eagles to lose, so that's kind of playing into that a little bit. You can't be too pessimistic this early. You kind of got to wait a little bit. I think that we're going to see a game not dissimilar in script and in flow to what we saw with the Rams playing the Cowboys in week 1, which is to say nobody really wanted to win that game. Nobody was really dominating that game. And it wasn't like somebody surged late or somebody took it away late. It was kind of close all the way down. That's probably what we're going to be looking at. I think what you're going to see in Philadelphia with the amount of deep shots that they took against Washington in week 1, if Deshaun Jackson is healthier, they're claiming he was not unhealthy in week 1, but he only played like 50% of the snaps, which is ridiculous. If Deshaun Jackson is healthier, Jalen Reagor is still out there. If they hit on 1 or 2 more deep shots in that game that they missed, it probably ends differently anyway. And so I think that it's going to be tough for the Eagles to put a worse passing game performance out than they did against Washington, both in terms of the balls they completed and the sacks that Wentz took. So if you just assume some positive regression there, I think they have enough offensively to get this thing done. If anything, beyond what we saw Cowboys versus Rams, there's going to be more points on the board. I think as we've cleared up here, both defenses have some weak spots. But I think the Eagles are going to be able to take this one. I'm not all the way in on the Rams really kind of being back to their innovative offensive ways until I see it for a couple weeks.
Yeah, no, I feel that. And I kind of look at this game as it could be a lot tougher than, because right before we went on this podcast, I looked into this injury report and I was like, wait a minute, this team's going to be relatively, well, they still have a lot of guys out and on IR, but this team's going to be relatively healthy if all those guys play. And I think, we're looking more like a lot of those guys are going to play. And I think at that point, the Rams are going up against a team that's going to have, a pretty good team out there. They're not going to be playing against the same team, the Washington football team went up against and still almost lost to. So, I look at it, I think the Rams do win this game. I was predicting a blowout before the injury report because I felt like guys like Miles Sanders would be out, guys like Lane Johnson could be out. But now with them all likely to play, I'm going to go more, I'm going to say it's a 33-27 affair. I think it's going to be a fun one. I think the Rams and Eagles are always kind of fun. We saw the game where Carson Wentz tore his ACL at the Coliseum. And then, I think it was a Sunday night game in 2018 to follow that season. So, we've seen these two teams like to, they like to make it exciting and get down to the wire. And I'll tell you, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple Sam Sloman missed field goals in there to make it interesting.
Sam Sloman, man.
And have the opportunity for the Eagles to potentially go down the field. And once again, put Rams fans through hell and back having to watch the last drive of the game. But that's what I have, 33-27. A lot depends on, how they run the football, who's going to get the lion's share of the carries. I think, they're kind of hinting towards the idea that Malcolm Brown they rode with the hot hand in week one, and maybe they want to push, Cam Akers more. I know they want to push Darrell Henderson more. I think it was more because of his injury and maybe he wasn't fully healthy. But, furthermore, though, I think it's going to be a fun game, and I have the Rams 33-27.
So I have the Rams winning 35-14.
Oh no.
I don't know. I have a good feeling about the Rams against the Eagles. I don't really know why. I just think, the Eagles kind of concern me a little bit. I was telling Jake, and I've said this several times on our podcast, that the NFC East to me just doesn't seem super competitive to me this year. But I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong for your sake. I love watching close games that the Rams win. No one wants to watch a blowout, no matter if it's your team or not. I don't think. I want to see a good game, but I do feel like the Rams are going to really be clicking on offense this week. And I do think Van Jefferson as well is going to have a great game. I think that Darius Slay is probably going to be spending most of his time on Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp. So I think Van Jefferson is probably going to have at least 1 to 2 touchdowns. That's just my guess. And then, I hope that Cam Akers really gets involved. So yeah, I know it's kind of, I guess, bold or it's dramatic or whatever, but I do think the Rams are going to win 35-14.
I didn't realize I was supposed to give a score. That's my bad. 23, because we'll give you a Sam Sloman missed extra point. 27-23. Go Birds. Man, I'm hoping that it's not 35-14. I would be very sad.
We'll see. One of us is going to be sad either way.
Yeah.
That's very true. Well, hey, Ben, it's been a pleasure having you. We'll wrap this show up with all of us, but I just wanted to thank you before we went off the air. Also want to thank you for, getting on the table and yelling from the rooftops that, Corey Littleton does matter because I'm the biggest Corey Littleton fan you'll probably ever meet, and the Rams are going to miss him in this game. But that's going to do it, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed episode 312 of the Downtown Rams podcast. Before we go, Ben, where can my listeners find all of your wonderful content?
Jake, Alexis, I appreciate y'all having me on. I'm Benjamin Solak on Twitter at Benjamin Solak. That's SOLAK. And yeah, my Eagles stuff is at Bleeding Green Nation and BGN Radio. Draft stuff's at the Draft Network. Bad jokes are on Twitter. Pretty easy stuff.
Pretty easy stuff. But I wanted to give you that plug because I know we talked a little bit about that earlier, but you deserve it, man. Hey, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoyed, and go Rams.